And as a reminder, for more Microsoft webcasts, you can visit microsoft.com/webcasts. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's TechNet webcast, SQL Server 2005 SP2 Tools and Improvements. It's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. We have Paul Mustemaker joining us today. Paul is a program manager with the Microsoft Corporation. Now, without any further delay, I'm going to turn the floor over to Paul.
Thanks a lot, Tracy. As Tracy mentioned, I'm a program manager here at Microsoft on the SQL Server manageability team. Over the last 9 months or so, I've been hard at work with my team on improving SQL Server 2005 with improvements in Service Pack 2. So today, I will give a very brief overview of what's new across the box in SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2, and then I will drill down into some demos of the new features from my team, the manageability team. Prerequisite knowledge that would be good to have would be experience with SQL Server 2005, high-level concepts. Before we get started, I would like to understand who my audience is. It's a lot easier to understand when I see you face-to-face, but I would like you to fill out this poll. So could you please describe your database environment for me? All right, it looks that the majority of our audience, 63%, is running both SQL Server 2000 and 2005, so a mixed mode environment. Looks like there's one other person, 2 other people that have an other environment. Maybe you're scoping out the competition, I'm not sure. Okay, so the next question I would like to ask is, do you use Microsoft Connect? All right, the majority of the audience does not know what Microsoft Connect is. Microsoft Connect is our customer portal that Microsoft uses for soliciting feedback from our customers. So SQL Server has a site on here, which is connect.microsoft.com/SQL Server/feedback, and I will be giving the links to this information at the end of the presentation. But what this site allows you to do is to file bugs and suggestions on the current product and future products of Microsoft. So if you find something that you do not like about SQL Server 2005, you can follow this URL, register with your Windows Live ID, and file a suggestion. Once that suggestion is filed, it enters into our internal bug tracking database and is given to our product team so that we can look at your issue and make a decision on whether we can fix it in a service pack, whether we can fix it in a future release, or if there's a workaround so that we can get you unblocked without having to change the product at all. So today's agenda, we will first cover what's new across the box, very high level, not even a 100 level I would say, and then we'll drill down. So what's new in Service Pack 2? Well, with the core database engine, we have 2 flagship improvements. There's a new var decimal storage format for the Enterprise Edition SKU. So if you have a decimal data type and you want to enable this new storage format, you can save between 5 and 30% based on our tests of your storage space. There's also a plan cache improvement, which will improve how we store plans in the plan cache. With analysis services, there are significant performance improvements over RTM and SP1. I think some of our customers who are early adopters of Service Pack 2 reported up to a 90% performance improvement. There are also really cool data mining plugins for Microsoft Office Excel 2007. So you can take advantage of the analysis services data mining features right in a customer-facing utility like Microsoft Office Excel. In SQL Server reporting services, we've done a bunch of work to integrate it with Microsoft SharePoint products and technologies. And finally, there is support for SQL Server 2005 on Windows Vista once you install Service Pack 2. there is more drill down information available on the web, and I will be able to provide that link via my blog at the end of this webcast. So now I'd like to drill down into what my team has worked on for the past 9 months. So I'll cover the customer pain points first. So there were some customers complaining about difficulty of administrating multiple instances with maintenance plans. So we have improved the distribution of our maintenance plans and made it more enterprise credible. There has also been a strong desire to customize SQL Server Management Studio. And to address this pain point, we have enabled custom reports in Management Studio. I'll be showing a couple really fun demos on how you can use custom reports. And there were customers asking for a best practice tool. They wanted to ensure that their environment was up to snuff for best practices. So we've worked closely with our customer support team and with our BI teams to put together an initial set of best practices recommendations, and we have released a CTP of SQL Server 2005 Best Practices Analyzer. It will be releasing to web in the next few weeks for a RTM version. And then there were a number of SQL Server 2000 takeaway features, as we call them, which were scenarios that were possible or readily available with the SQL Server 2000 tools that weren't readily available in, say, Management Studio. So we've addressed the top concerns in script generation and the copy database wizard, as well as a number of minor improvements all across our flagship tool of Management Studio. So I would like to demo the improvements in script generation, custom reports in Management Studio, multi-instance administration with maintenance plans, and the SQL Server 2005 Best Practices Analyzer. Feel free to ask questions at any time if they relate to maintenance plans or certain areas that my colleague Jim Howie will be able to answer. He will answer them via the text panel at the bottom. Otherwise, I will address the questions at the end by reading them aloud. So with that, I'd like to get started. This is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio for those of you who are running SQL Server 2005 somewhere in your environment. I know about 20% of our audience is running a SQL Server 2000 only environment. So we have introduced this new tool which combines Enterprise Manager and Query Analyzer into a single suite. We have a set of functionality that is common across all of our objects that we thought that database administrators would really enjoy. For example, many of our dialog boxes, almost all of our dialog boxes, are non-modal and resizable. So you can have multiple dialog boxes open at the same time. If you want to change something, you do not necessarily have to enable it. You can script the action out to a clipboard, or you can script the action out to a file, a new query window, or a job, so that you can run this during your idle periods, or if you just want to inspect the T-SQL that is the T-SQL that will be created before executing it, you can see this is exactly what Management Studio would do. This is also a good way to put together templates for your SQL scripts. So you can use a GUI to create the base template and then modify it appropriately to execute it on the rest of your environment. In SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2, we have introduced some advanced scripting features. So in RTM and SP1, you could highlight multiple objects in what was formerly known as the summary page, which is now known as the Object Explorer Details page. And you can right-click them and script them out. So if you want to create all these tables, you could say create to new query editor window, and it will create based on the properties of the table all of the necessary DDL. Now in Service Pack 2, we give you the option to customize how this gets scripted out. So if you want to script out for SQL Server 2000, you can choose to script for the older version. Or if you choose to, you can include the if not exist clause, or generate the script for dependent objects. These were a number of the most popular asks through Microsoft Connect and through the forums and through the news groups. So we wanted to address these by giving you the option of creating these with each of the scripts that you're generating. Also, if you want to script out multiple object types opposed to just scripting out all the tables and then scripting out all the views, what you can use is you can right-click on a database, go to Tasks, and choose Generate Scripts, and this will launch the Generate Script wizard. And you can choose which database you would like to script out. And the defaults for this wizard are based on the options that you set in the Tools Options scripting dialog. So if you normally want to script out the if not exist clause, but for the wizard choose not to, you can do that. And you can choose different object types. So if you want to script out stored procedures, tables, and views, you can do that, and you can choose to select all the objects or just a couple. Another thing that we had introduced in SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2 is the ability to script these to a file for a file per object. So every single view, table, stored procedure, every object will be scripted out to its own file. This was something that was possible in SQL Server 2000 that we weren't able to implement for SQL Server 2005. But with Service Pack 2, we have reintroduced it. So those are a few of the benefits for scripting and script generation in Service Pack 2. The next thing I'd like to get into is the reports. So in Management Studio, we have introduced a few sets of management data. These are known as the dynamic management views, the catalog views, and the default trace. And with RTM and SP1, we had introduced all of this great data and put together these reports, but it was very difficult to discover that these reports existed. In the past, you would have to open up Object Explorer, you'd have to open up the summary page, and then you'd have to click on one of 5 different nodes to enable a button over here on the summary page. So many people didn't know these reports existed. I assure you they did, but now they're far more discoverable with Service Pack 2. So we've made it a first-class citizen so that you can just right-click on any node in Object Explorer, and if there are reports available for it, you go to the Standard Reports flyout and choose the reports. So you can see for a server instance node, you can have this set of about 20 reports. But for a database, you will get a different set of reports. So you can look at, for example, the disk usage report, which with RTM and SP1 had many very IO-intensive queries. And we have split up this report into 5 different reports so that it is more scalable for databases that have thousands and thousands of objects. So now you can see very quickly the total space usage for your database as well as for the files. You can also, with Service Pack 2, open each of these reports in their own report window. So if we want to compare 2 databases to each other, you can see, I will just auto-hide these so we have more room. You can see that I have the AdventureWorks database here and the AdventureWorks DW database here. So I can take this and put it onto a new horizontal tab group, and I can compare this same report to different databases side by side. I can also run this report on a different server instance, so I can see if AdventureWorks on server A is different than AdventureWorks on server B. And it looks on the surface that they are indeed taking up a different amount of space, so they could be different databases. I might have modified one for a demo earlier in the month. Also with Service Pack 2, we have introduced the ability to run custom reports. So you can choose, you can make a report inside Visual Studio or Business Intelligence Development Studio as we call it, by creating a new report project. And we will make it of type report server project. It'll take a second to come up here. So while that's coming up, I'll show you a set of reports that have already been made. I've worked with some of our SQL Server most valuable professionals to put together a set of reports, and oddly enough, people really wanted to have the taskpad view that was available in Enterprise Manager. So I asked the MVPs what reports they would like to make and to send me a link to their blog or wherever they posted the reports. So I will show you what you can do with a custom report. So if you want to see the taskpad view that was available in Enterprise Manager in SQL Server 2000, you can load that right here into Management Studio. So this is just a standard reporting services report, but it's running inside Management Studio. It's running in the context of how you were connected to Object Explorer. So these reports can be run by any person, but it can only access the data that is available through the security principles that you've used with the connection to SQL Server. So if you want, you can write reports of your own, and there are different, for each node we pass in the context sensitivity. So if you want to see what information we pass in, you can either read books online, or you can run this RDL file called standard parameters, which is also documented in Books Online. One thing that I'd like to note here is this, this warning dialog. It says, warning, you're about to run a custom report. Reports may contain malicious queries which can be executed when the reports are generated. You should only run reports from a trustworthy source. This is very important because reports can contain any T-SQL. That means not just select statements, but they can contain insert, update, and delete statements. So if you're running this RDL file against an instance that has SA privileges, essentially that report has admin privileges on your SQL Server. So make sure that you only run reports that you trust. For example, they come from Microsoft, or your development team has made them and posted them on a share. So you can see here with this report that because I ran it from the AdventureWorks node on the local server, that the report gets parameters passed in that say, this is AdventureWorks, it's an object type database, and it's on the server name local. If you want, you can run this report from a table, and you can see that the object name is dbo.errorlog. It's of type table. It's on server local, and it's in the AdventureWorks database. So you can take this RDL file and run it against your server, and then you can understand how you can leverage these parameters. So in Business Intelligence Development Studio, if you want to create a new report server project to to create your own RDL file, you can use any relational engine data source. So let's call this master, and I will connect it to local and then connect it to master. All of this information is irrelevant because the connection information will be passed in via Management Studio. This is only for your design environment. So now I'm going to write a query that says select star from dmexec query stats so that I can look at the dynamic management view that contains the most recent statistics on query execution. I'll make a tabular data set. I'll add in some information to the details. I'll give it a color scheme. It's also not important to put in the report server and deployment folder. This is also just for your design time environment. So I'll call it Paul's demo, and I will preview the report. So this will create the RDL file. It will execute the T-SQL against the design time environment's data source, and then it will render the report using reporting services technology. So you can see here in Visual Studio, it only took a minute to create a very simple report. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that RDL file on my hard drive, and I'm going to right-click, choose Reports, Custom Reports, and run this RDL file through Management Studio. It'll give me the warning saying, is this from a trusted source? I will say, yes, please continue to run. And you can see right here inside Management Studio, I'm running a reporting services RDL file against a relational engine data source. Now you can do a lot of really cool things with custom reports, and I've worked closely with Keith Elmore, one of our customer support technicians, on creating a performance dashboard for SQL Server 2005, Service Pack 2, and later. So you can go to the Microsoft Download Center to look up SQL Server 2005 Performance Dashboards Reports, and you will be able to obtain these reports directly from Microsoft to help you diagnose performance problems. So this report gives you an overview of what your SQL Server has been doing based on the data available in the dynamic management views. So you can see here, here's your system CPU utilization over the last 15 minutes. Down here in the lower left-hand corner, you can see a breakdown of your user requests and your user sessions. Now with custom reports, you can drill down into other reports. So if I want to look at the active traces that are going against my system, I can click on active traces. It informs me that I will be opening a new RDL file in this location, and that this is also susceptible to take over my system if it is a malicious RDL file. So you can see the traces report. This is everything that Keith Elmore has made. He's just a SQL Server guru and did not know anything about reporting services before starting this project. And after a few weeks, he was able to put together these reports in his part-time focus on this project. So you can see a breakdown of the different events that are in this trace. You can go back if you want to see what type of CPU information is available. You can drill down on the recent CPU RDL, and you can see the queries available. If you want to, you can see the session ID and the recent CPU used by that. You can drill down on a query, and you can see the show plan XML for that query and the report parameters passed into it. You can also see the statement text, which is a I believe, the relative and physical operators taken out of the show plan XML. So all sorts of really great information is available in these performance dashboard reports that work with SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2. So a quick recap with Service Pack 2, we have introduced the ability to run multiple reports in the report window so that you can see the same report over time, or you can see the report against different databases and different instances. We improved the scalability so that you can run our standard reports against databases with multi-thousands of objects. We've given you the ability to run your own custom reports, and we've also provided an end-to-end scenario using this functionality by enabling Keith Elmort to create the performance dashboard reports. So all in all, I think that's a pretty exciting new feature. Now I'd like to move on to multi-instance administration with maintenance plans. So in SQL Server 2005, we introduced a new concept, which was graphical maintenance plans. So under the management node in a SQL Server 2005 workgroup or hire SKU, you can right-click and choose Maintenance Plan Wizard. And what this will do is it will create a maintenance plan based on an SSIS package. So we'll call this a demo plan. And we will choose some of the most frequently used maintenance tasks. So if I'm going to make a backup plan, I'd like to first check my database integrity, then do a full backup, and then do a cleanup of the backup files. In SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2, we have introduced the maintenance cleanup task into the maintenance plan wizard. Before, you had to modify the package after the maintenance plan wizard completed to add the maintenance cleanup task. You can choose in what order you'd like these to run in the wizard. I think the current order is fine. I will run this against all user databases. So this means that whenever a user database is created, this package will run against all user databases. So you don't need to choose a static set of databases. You can choose all user databases so that any database you add will have this package run against it in the future. I'll do the same for the backup database task. And I will choose to put this in the backup folder under full. And then for the define maintenance cleanup task, this is a somewhat confusing dialog. I've seen many posts on this. The problem here is that the folder name is blank by default. You need to put in the proper path here. So you should put in, for backup files, you should put in your backup directory with your extension of BAK. And this checkbox says to include first level subfolders, because if you go back, you can see where I checked the box that says create a subdirectory for each database. This means that when you create backups, you can have each database put into its own folder. So you can see for the foo database, all of the backups are in a centralized location. So for the maintenance cleanup task, I'll want to make sure that it looks in the first level subfolders for backup files that it can clean up. With Service Pack 2, we've also introduced the ability to delete files older than hours. Before, the smallest granularity was in days. So now that we've introduced hours, you can have a much smaller footprint when taking backups and using maintenance plans. You can log this information to text files, or you can use database mail to send an email report, but I haven't defined an operator yet for database mail, so I can't do that. So this will go through and create the necessary pieces to an SSIS package and then load that onto the server. So if we want to look at this graphically, we can right-click on it and choose Modify. So you can see here that upon completion, which is this blue arrow, from the check database integrity, it will go to back up the databases and then do a cleanup. If I want to only clean up old backups once it is successful, I can right-click. Instead of choosing completion, I will choose success. That way, if backups are successful at one point, would then start to fail or partially fail, then I will not be deleting my previously successful backups. Also in SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2, we've introduced the notion of subplans. Subplans allow you to have a separate schedule for a logically related part of the plan. So if I'm going to go through and delete this demo plan, and go to another one of my servers where I already have a maintenance plan defined that has multiple tabs, that has multiple subplans. You can see here that I've added a little bit more bells and whistles, so you can see that I've done a database integrity check, then I did a full backup, and then I would delete the old differential backups and delete really old full backups. So every 20 minutes this runs, and then every hour it will delete the old differential backups, and every 4 hours it will delete the really old full backups. In the different subplans, we have a set of tasks that that are logically related. So I have my entire backup policy in this one maintenance plan, but now all of the logical tasks are put together in subplans so that I won't need to have multiple maintenance plans floating around this instance or multiple instances. And this way, if somebody's new to my organization, they can see, oh, here's my backup policy, and here we do the log backup, the differential backup, and the full backup. And it's like the change in Internet Explorer 6 to Internet Explorer 7, where you can see all the different tabs in a centralized location. It really improves the user experience and understanding of how your maintenance plans are put together. Now, also with Service Pack 2, we have introduced the ability to distribute these maintenance plans across multiple instances through the master server target server relationship with SQL Server Agent. So you can see that this maintenance plan has a little down arrow, and that this maintenance plan has an up arrow. If you want to, you can distribute these with the MSX-TSX relationship. So if you click on the servers icon on the toolbar, you can see that this is being distributed to the local server as well as to my development server, PalmNest1. Let me show you how easy it is to enlist another target server through the multi-server administration dialog. So I'm using my master server, which is SQL VSTF01. I'm going to right-click, choose multi-server administration, and then choose Add Target Servers. This will bring up a wizard that will enumerate my registered servers, and I will choose one of my enterprise instances, and it will create the necessary login information. And as simple as that, you can see that the SQL agent service on the target instance is now enlisted with the master instance. So down here, you can see that SQL Server Agent is now the TSX to this server right here. Now, this is interesting when you start applying it to scenarios. So now you can take this backup policy, which I've defined, which could be far more complex than this, and you can choose to distribute it across multiple servers. So imagine if you had 10 servers or 100 servers, you can define your backup policy once, you can set up the relationship between your servers once, and then you can choose to distribute all of your maintenance plans or agent jobs and have one centralized location for updates. So I just decided to distribute this to the target server. So I'm modifying the maintenance plan, I'm choosing Save, and I can view the progress of this action by right-clicking on the SQL Server agent, choosing Multi-Server Administration, and choose Manage Target Servers. So if we look, we can see the Download Instructions tab, and I will look at the new server that I have put on here, and we can see that at 1:38 p.m. we have transferred the backup policy, backup full, backup differential, and backup log to the target server. So now when I go down here to the target server and I right-click on maintenance plans and choose refresh, you can see that backup policy is now there. And you can double-click on it to view the package. You cannot modify the package on the target, as it notes right here, because it's distributed from a master server, but you can view it. And now all changes that are made to this maintenance plan on the master server will be distributed to all targets. So if you want to rename this to My Demo Enterprise Backup Policy, I can save that, and it will propagate the changes to each of the target servers. Now, what's interesting about this is that you can also choose to do centralized reporting and logging. So you can look at the history by right-clicking on the maintenance plan and choosing View History, and it will go through and list the individual components for each of the maintenance plans. And you can drill down and see that the log backup here has failed because the database is put into a simple recovery mode. But you can see that the differential backup has succeeded and the full backup has succeeded. You can choose to filter this out if you'd like. So if you want to filter on differential, you can do so. But also, you can choose, in order to view these logs, you would have to go to each of the individual instances and view the history. And this is not something that would scale to dozens or hundreds of servers. So we've enabled the ability for you to remote this to a central, or to log this to a centralized server. So if you click on the icon in the maintenance plan that says reporting and logging, and then choose log to remote server, you can create a new connection. I'll call this log to central server, and then enter a server name like SQL VSTS01, which is the master server. And now, whenever this maintenance plan is executed remotely, all of the logs for it will be logged both remotely on each of the individual instances, as well as logged to a central source. So you can choose to view history, and then once it executes remotely, it will send the information back to the master server, and you can choose to view remote maintenance plans history right here in the log file viewer. So that is an overview of the improvements to maintenance plans in SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2. I see a few questions have been queued up, so I will try to address those at the end, or Jim Howie can try to address those via text right now. The last improvement that I would like to go over is the SQL Server 2005 Best Practices Analyzer. It is currently available in a CTP form, and this is an interim build between the CTP and the RTW release. So I'm just forewarning that these are beta bits currently. And the first thing it does is it checks for updates on the web. With the CTP release, we had an error in our logic in trying to use an auto update framework, but we will fix that for the RTM version. The first thing you can do is select options for a new scan, or look at a scan that has already been completed. With the RTW version, we've taken customer feedback into account and had it remember the instances that you've used in previous scans. So I will just clear these out real quick and show you how you can set them up for the first scan. So you can choose a computer name where it will enumerate all SQL Server 2005 instances. So we have rules that are based on the database engine, analysis services, and integration services. So for this, my local server, I will run only a couple of rules against the database engine, and I will specifically choose which databases I want to scan against. And then I will choose a remote server and choose analysis services as well as integration services and a named instance. So I'll choose my remote databases. I'll choose to analyze some analysis services databases. And I will choose to look at one of the maintenance plans as well as some copy database wizard packages that we've created. Now I can take all of these settings and export them to a scan settings file. So if I want one of my colleagues to have the same set of essentially registered servers, then you can send them an XML file. You also have the choice between a limited scan and a detailed scan. A limited scan would have very quick rules that may take less than 5 seconds apiece, whereas a detailed scan would scan things like the event log, which could potentially take 30 seconds or more for individual rules to fire. So by default, you can choose limited scan. If you are not in if you're in an idle period, you can choose detailed scan, and we will check to see if there are any potentially critical situations that have come up in the past through event logs. You can also name this, so I'll name this my monthly scan, March 2007, and choose to scan the components. So this will go through and enumerate each of the scan items that we have chosen, and it will go through first the database engine, and then it will go through to each of the following services. We have this running in a serialized fashion so that it minimizes the overhead on your server. This is currently running on Windows XP. You can run it on Vista. You can run it on Server 2003. We do recommend that you scan remotely because the tool does take up a little bit of memory, and we would recommend that for your production environments that you run the tool from a client machine. The client machine needs to have the SQL Server 2005 client tools on it or the XML redistributables, as well as the .NET 2.0 framework. While this is running, it will choose one rule at a time and go through them serially. So I think the backup policy was cranking away on that server, which is why it took a while to get past it. But you can see that it runs through the rules pretty quickly. We're already completed with 2 of our servers. And we have interim progress for each item, as well as an overall progress bar. Now that the scan is completed, all of the settings have been stored in an XML file on your hard disk, and we can take that XML file and turn it into an interactive report. So what you see here are your critical issues and all of your issues. If you have critical issues, we introduce this tab. You can choose to look at each one of these issues and determine if it is right for your environment. So this tool ultimately informs you of potential problems as well as how to solve it. So if you don't know what a token replacement, if you don't understand what the token replacement issue is, you can click on the item and read this CHUM article that explains how we detected it, why it's important, what you should do to resolve the issue, and where you can go for more information. We've recently had an issue with the initial release of Service Pack 2 and maintenance plans. So we've just put together this rule that describes how we've detected it and what you can do to resolve it in your system. This is also detected by Microsoft Update, and we're coming out with a utility soon so that you can scan your environment. So you have 3 different ways of detecting this potential issue if you had downloaded Service Pack 2 before March 5th. There's also a knowledge base article right here that you can click on to get all of the details if you want to read more about that. If you're running this against multiple servers or you have not addressed many of your problems, you'll probably want to pivot this based on severity or issue type. So you can see, oh, well, I have this problem on multiple databases or multiple server instances. Now, if you don't believe that this is a rule that's appropriate for your environment, for example, if you don't have separate volumes for your backups and for your database, you can choose to ignore this for this specific database instance. Or you can choose to ignore this rule altogether for all instances. This way, you'll only be presented with the information that you deem valuable to your environment. If you want to find a specific rule, if you remember having an issue with maintenance plans, you can type in maintenance plan tasks, and it will go through and filter and show you only that one issue. If for some reason you have accidentally ignored an issue, you can go to the Other Reports area and choose to show me this item again for all instances. Now all this hiding and showing does is it filters it out of the report and puts it to a different tab. This information is still collected with each of your scans and is still stored in the XML file, but it just will not be easily visible with the report itself. This way you will always have the chance to go back and see in what scans you've encountered different issues after the fact. There's also a command line version called SQL BPA CMD, and you can choose each individual rule that you would like to scan for your environment. So if we come out with a new rule like the maintenance plan tasks rule for Service Pack 2 and you want to scan your entire environment, you can choose to run RID 3080 and only run that rule against your entire servers. And you can use the scan settings file from the UI. So you can graphically choose all of your servers, save it to an XML file, and then choose to run this in a scheduled fashion or during your idle period, or use the command line to run only one specific rule, so that your scan, instead of taking 20 or 30 seconds per server or 5 minutes per server on a production load, it can reduce the overhead significantly. With the UI, you can choose to schedule a scan under Windows credentials. You can go through and see the entire history of the reports that have been run. These reports are stored in your C:/Documents and Settings directory under your username, Application Data, Microsoft, SQL BPA. So you can see all of the scan settings and data files that contain your scan details. Before I had mentioned Microsoft Connect. So if you would like to report feedback on any of Microsoft's products, you can click on this link. And you can log into Microsoft Connect, where you can provide feedback. So if you want to search for Best Practices Analyzer, you can see that there have been 2 reported suggestions for Best Practices Analyzer over the last month. This is a great way to get in touch with the product team, as well as make sure that your suggestions will be considered by the appropriate teams inside Microsoft. So in the last 5 minutes, I would like to just do a quick recap. We have given you the ability to administer multiple instances with maintenance plans. We've introduced custom reports in Management Studio, a new tool, SQL Server Best Practices Analyzer. We've fixed many bugs that I couldn't even have time to show you today. I have another hour or 2 of demos that I could easily show you, but I would appreciate some feedback on how well the team has done. So on a scale from 1 to 5, how would you rate the tools improvements in Service Pack 2? All right, so far we have about 60 or 70 responses, and 60% say 4, some useful improvements that will make my day easier, and 33% say, wow, the improvements are really cool and useful, I will be more productive. Okay, and now I'd like to get some specific feedback on which improvement area that I've demoed today was your favorite. So we have the Management Studio reports. We have the Performance Dashboard reports, which use the custom reporting feature. We have multi-instance administration with maintenance plans, the customization of script generation, and the new Best Practices Analyzer utility. Okay, so these are pretty evenly dispersed, so it looks like a lot of them are very exciting or very useful to different audiences. The top one is the Performance Dashboard reports. I will give that feedback to Keith Elmore, and maybe we can get a webcast available, maybe a 300 or 400 level webcast to drill down on how you can use the performance dashboard reports to resolve locking, blocking, and different performance issues associated with SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2. So in summary, Service Pack 2 contains bug fixes as well as new features, both within SQL Server manageability and across the product. I would appreciate any feedback that you guys have, any complaints, any suggestions, to be submitted through connect.microsoft.com/SQL-Server/feedback. And this will go directly into our bug tracking database, and we will get back to you and keep you informed with the decision we have on your suggestion. We are absolutely committed to continually improving your customer experience. So seriously, if there's anything that you like at all or anything that you do not like or would like to have improved, submit it on Microsoft Connect or the forums or the news groups or my blog, and we will do our best to address it in a future release. So the next steps that you have, visit my blog, which is blogs.msdn.com/SQLREM. In the next 2 days, I will post a link to this webcast as well as to the resources I refer to, such as the Best Practices Analyzer download, the Performance Dashboard Reports download, what's new in SP2, as well as Microsoft Connect. If you haven't already, please consider downloading Service Pack 2, test it out in your environment, in your test environment, and then if you determine that it's ready for your production environment, please go ahead and take advantage of all of our new features. And if you'd like, you can take a look at our feature pack, which contains the redistributables for XMO. It contains SQL Command. It contains SQL Server Best Practices Analyzer, the Performance Dashboard Reports, the Excel, the data mining plugins for Excel 2007. It's a great resource for all of the add-ons that make SQL Server such a great product. And with that, I would like to hand it back to Tracy, and I will be back momentarily to answer your questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. And remember, for more information, everyone can print a PDF of today's session. And in order to do that, just go to the File menu in your upper navigation bar. We will be getting to the remaining questions and answers here shortly, so please feel free to submit your questions now into the bottom corner of your screen. You can hit that question manager down there. Also, I'm going to be posting a survey here in just a minute. If you'd all please take a moment to fill it out before you log off. We do appreciate your feedback. For any upcoming and previously recorded webcasts, you can visit Microsoft.com/webcasts. You can go here to access this webcast, which will be available for download in about 24 hours. Also, if you have any webcast content ideas, if there's something out there that you would like to see and haven't yet, we'd love to hear from you. Just take note of this link here. And for anybody who's interested in receiving a free 14-day trial of Microsoft Office Live Meeting, you'll want to visit Microsoft.com/presentlive. Now for filling out that survey today, you're going to be automatically entered in to win this 30GB Zune digital media player. So it definitely gives you a little incentive to fill that out for us today. And here is the survey. Please follow the links provided to complete today's webcast evaluation. And Paul, looks like you do have some questions waiting there for you.
All right, so first question. Can we get clickable or copyable versions of these URLs? Yes. I will put those on my blog in the next couple of days, blogs.msdn.com/SQLREM, or just search for my name on live.com or Google, and my blog will come up. Where do we download the EM TaskPad report? That was made by Jasper Smith, and I believe also posted by Simon Sabin. They are both SQL Server MVPs. If you go to my blog, I have a link to theirs, I believe in December of 2006. But I will make sure to put that in my, my follow-up to this webcast as well. There's a question specifically on the Performance Dashboard Reports. It says, on Performance Dashboard Reports download page, additional information section, there's a reference to setup.sql and Performance Dashboard main.rdl files. Where are those found? So on the Performance Dashboard Reports download page, you will download an MSI, which will install the RDL files on your hard disk. And then you need to run the setup.sql file against each of the instances of SQL Server Service Pack 2 that you would like to run the reports against. So why we need to do this is Keith created a set of stored procedures which will be installed in, I believe, MSDB or master, and he refers to those stored procedures in his reports. So after running the MSI, you would then run the setup.sql file, and then performance dashboard main.rdl is the entry point that you use for Management Studio. So you can right-click on a node in Object Explorer, and then browse to your installation directory, and choose performance dashboard main.rdl. The question is, where can I download the Best Practices Analyzer? You can search for Best Practices Analyzer on the Microsoft Download Center, or you can go to the SP2 feature pack, and there's a link from there. Or you could go to my blog post from blogs.msdn.com/sqlrem and download it from there. The question says, can the custom reports query a 2000 instance? No, the custom reports in Management Studio will only work against SQL Server 2005 and later editions. There's a question that asks, how would you pass parameters to the SSRS reports opened directly in Management Studio? Inside Business Intelligence Development Studio, you can choose a set of reports as, or you can choose a set of parameters for each of your reports. And the parameters are outlined both in my blog as well as the Books Online help topic, and it's been rated a 4-star, so I think we did a good job documenting how well that that new feature works. If you have any specific questions that aren't that are related to the Management Studio custom reports and you aren't getting an answer, please go to the SQL Server Tools General Forum on MSDN. I believe it's forums.microsoft.com/MSDN, and post to the SQL Server Tools General Forum, and I will answer your question there. So there are another few questions that I'd like to address before I sign off. This says, would love a webcast on the dashboard reports. Great idea. All right, thanks for that feedback. I'll see if Keith can set one up here in the next month or two. This person says, the RDL created in Business Intelligence Studio, are they still not compatible with Visual Studio RDLs? I'm not sure what that question is. Let me try and elaborate. There is to run an RDL in Management Studio, there is a subset of the functionality that you can use of the reporting services RDL schema. So you can only use the relational engine data source, so you only can use T-SQL. You can't use any custom .NET data providers. You can't use XMLA or MDX or any of that, any of the BI technologies. You can't use sub-reports, and but you can use custom parameters, and you can pass parameters from one report to another, which I thought is the bare minimum set of requirements to make this scenario complete without introducing too much complexity as well as potential security threats. So if you can rephrase that question on the SQL Server Tools General Forum, I will try and do a better job of answering it. Second question was, how is Best Practices Analyzer 2.0 different than the Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer 2.0? So across Microsoft, we have a set of best practice utilities that all use a common framework. It first started with the Exchange team, and then it went out to a set of teams, and we are picking up the Exchange framework for this BPA utility. They look very similar, BPA as well as MBSA 2.0, but the rules are different. We have a set of rules defined by our customer support team, our security team, analysis services, integration services, etc. They all have the same idea, where we want to make sure that you as our customers have an idea of how we would validate your environment. While it's not 100% certain that your environment is perfect, it is good to run these utilities to understand how at least the major known issues that we can algorithmically detect. The third question was, what is the path for Best Practices Analyzer 2.0 where it stores the scans XML? It is in C:/documents and settings / your username / application data / Microsoft / SQL BPA. If you try and export any of the reports, it will go to that directory by default, so you can right click and choose Explore. There's a question, is there a command line equivalent of the script to file wizard? I don't believe Microsoft has a utility that can script each of the objects to a file. The community might have some, so I would recommend posting on the SQL Server Tools general forum or post on my blog, and we'll see if an MVP has created one or if somebody else in the community has created one. A question came in that says, can performance dashboard report security, or in general SSMS report security, be granted on the report level for end users and operators? No, this is a tools. So the tool will load this report, and whatever the report can run against is the data that it can access. So if the end user is a normal user, they won't be able to view any of the performance information from the server, since that's coming from the dynamic management views. What you can do is you can grant or deny access to the view server state. I believe that's the view server state is the security role to get access to the dynamic management views, as well as you would have to give access to trace files as well. There's a question, did sorting by date, i.e. current activity management studio, get fixed in Service Pack 2? I'm not sure on this specific bug fix. Brian, if you could send me an email, I'll follow up with you directly after this. paul.mestamaker@microsoft.com. And then the last question says, have you fixed QA, I'm guessing that's query analyzer settings? Why are settings applied only to new windows? I like tabbed results, but that gets lost when I discard results. Settings for query analyzer results windows are pretty broken. Bill, if you can send me an email, I'll follow up with you directly. I'm not exactly sure what your complaint is, but I would like to make sure we can address it in the future. So paul.mestamaker@microsoft.com. All right, that seems to be all of the questions that have come in over the last hour that haven't been answered already. So thank you for joining me today, and if you have any future feedback, please post it to Microsoft Connect, my blog, or the SQL Server Tools General Forum on MSDN. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. I do want to extend a very special thank you to Paul for your presentation today. I'd also like to thank the audience for attending today's TechNet webcast. So ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude today's session. The audience may now disconnect from the audio portion of today's presentation.